Earth's orbital domain? Realm? Dominion? Yeah, Earth's orbital dominion is filled with crap. And I'm not referring to the literal kind, though I don't know that it can be disproven that some poop is floating around in space. Millions of pieces of orbital debris are circling the planet at speeds of roughly 26,000 kilometers per hour. This debris is known as space junk, being the unintended byproduct of human activity in space. These objects will eventually fall from orbit thanks to atmospheric drag, but eventually is a long time, and in the meantime, these objects will continue to whiz through space faster than the Dow Jones collapsed on Black Tuesday and also yesterday. This may come as a surprise to you, but space is very big, which means the likelihood of one piece of debris striking another is very low. However, one can only play poker so many times before inevitably drawing a bad hand. A bad hand in this case being the eventual destruction of all of humanity's orbital infrastructure. You see, a collision between two pieces of space junk could happen at any time, but that wouldn't be the end of it. No, that collision would simply create more space junk, which in turn would destroy more satellites, which in turn would create more space junk. And so it may be that just one collision between two pieces of space junk will kick off an unstoppable and exponentially growing string of collisions. The first fateful collision may have already occurred, and if so, it's only a matter of time until Earth's orbital domain is rendered unusable and untraversable. That would mean much more than just no more GPS navigation. It would also mean no moon base, no interstellar colonies, no alien sex, just us, here on Earth, all alone, not having sex with aliens. I think it's imperative that we address this problem. Good after evening, Cosmoronic number 15. I'm Fringy and I hope you're all doing well. I got some good news. Good, unless you either enjoy seeing people fail at the endeavors which matter to them, or more reasonably and much more likely, simply indifferent to the mundane goals of an Australian plague doctor. You remember 2 weeks ago, in the recent episode, when I was talking about all of the plight with trying to pursue creative pursuits? I've drawn something every day for the last 2 weeks. So, again, recalling, how I talked about creativity, motivation, discipline, all that shit 2 weeks ago. There's a lesson here, probably. I don't know what it is. All I know is that the routine will almost certainly not last. I'm a very optimistic person, you see. Because last week I talked about, here are all of the things that I learned from reading about, at a very low level. How does the brain work? How does the human mind approach tasks and not be lazy? And I'm not even sure how much of that really applied. I didn't set goals. I didn't establish a routine like in the morning or in the afternoon. I just kind of did stuff, and that was enough. And maybe that'll be enough going forward, but I'm not optimistic. We'll see though. Speaking of seeing things, I've seen more episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they're dire, but I'm not really in the mood to explain why at any exhaustive length. I find after finishing each episode of that show, my mind is bogged down in the sheer awfulness of that show. It's so incompetent. It's so remarkably incompetent. And I guess to some extent I'm a little surprised at how badly that show's turned out. 'Cause putting to one side production values, the show is as laughable as Book of Boba Fett, and I guess it's not. Well, Mando's got a lot of stupid, funny stuff in it too. And I suppose I expected to not get what I wanted. The thing that I've harped on about several times on this show already, about the story that I wanted for Obi-Wan that seems to be incompatible with the format of storytelling that is prevalent in these Star Wars, Marvel, Disney Plus shows. Yeah, I guess I'm just down on it because, I get sad thinking about that show, not just because of the wasted potential. I think it's partly the conversations surrounding Obi-Wan Kenobi have been annoying. It feels like it's very difficult to have the real conversation about that show. because it's mired in, for lack of a better word, the meta of Star Wars. It's hard to have conversations about anything Star Wars without people's minds, whether purposefully or unwittingly, becoming mired in, like in the meta conversation. Space wizards. This is a movie about space wizards intended for children. Remember that stormtrooper bonked his head on the ceiling, and then of course I guess just like the Star Wars fandom or whatever you would call it is it's not exactly a unified front by the looks of it. And I guess there's still a level of the sequels and the taint of the sequels, which I think at this point everybody kind of recognizes that the sequels were a mistake, whereas that hasn't really seeped into the shows yet. It seems like a lot of people are really thrilled with the Star Wars shows, when I find them to be as devoid of merit as the sequels. Maybe a little less insulting, but then again, Obi-Wan Kenobi is about a character I care about more, so it's kind of been, it's been more painful. Like, Mando was never a character, really, and the characters that he comes across are not characters I'm as invested in. And Boba Fett was cool, and so it's kind of lame that, like, the story that he finally got was just that lame and stupid. But it's not as upsetting as a character like Obi-Wan, who, despite all of the problems with the prequels, comes out of that series in a pretty decent place, and obviously has a really important place in the OT. And so watching all of this damage retroactively being dealt to this character has been annoying, but not as annoying as the conversations about this show. Something I'm fast realizing is that many people like Darth Vader for shallow reasons, frankly, when I previously thought that we all agreed on how he conducts himself and what that tells us about who he is. I thought we all liked him for the same reason, but apparently that's not the case. Like, some people really think that Darth Vader dragging Obi-Wan through an inferno is something he would do, that that's in character, that was a really cool moment. When I look at that, it just feels like it's absurd. That's not something that I believe that he would do. And almost, it's like, is it just because he is Darth Vader and he swings around his lightsaber and he's got a cool costume? Is that really all there was to it? That, like, he is pictured as the archetypical bad guy and not much more than that? That was all it is. Like, oh yeah, he's evil. And I mean, things that evil people do is inflict pain on people rather than being cold and clinical or needlessly harm innocent people in pursuit of their objectives when they don't need to. Oh yeah, that's what a villain does. So of course that's something Darth Vader would do. Like, a failure to recognize that Darth Vader has certain attributes that are villainous, but in a certain way. And that it's not enough to just have him do evil things. Or that it's not brilliant, like some profoundly smart idea. Hey, you know what? Darth Vader, he got dragged through some lava. You know what? I imagine that he would want to drag Obi-Wan through some fire too, to make him feel the pain he felt. Because Darth Vader really holds a grudge. He really does. He's not cold and efficient and ruthless. He's actually pretty mad and vengeful. I think by episode 4, which is where we're at right now, it's become very difficult to say that this version of Darth Vader is the same person that we see in the OT. Like, it's really hard to say that, for as much as some have been fawning over these scenes of him freaking the fuck out and being super angry, and I guess a failure to consider whether the decisions he's making are even rational, which is, it's kind of the impression you get with Darth Vader, is he is very much thinking about what is the best decision to make in any given circumstance and trying not to succumb to rage. In fact, so in control of his emotions that he tries to enrage other people by leveraging things against them that make them upset. For instance, in Return of the Jedi, sister, I'll convert her to the dark side, specifically to provoke Luke, because Darth Vader is not easily provoked. The few times that we see him genuinely angry in that series, the opening of A New Hope, when he gets struck in the arm with a lightsaber, which, you know, I think that's a fair reason to get kind of mad. What else would we be citing, really, of him getting mad? You know? Like, furious. Kylo Ren furious. So, yeah, we're kind of in a place now where I think even the most ardent defenders of the show would have to admit that this is not the Darth Vader that we see in the OT. Now, to be fair, the show is set roughly 9 years before the OT, but even having said that, I mean, surely by this stage in the timeline, we should be seeing more Darth Vader and less Anakin, right? It feels like the most radical change in his disposition occurred really early on, or that it would have, and that 10 years in, and thinking about the 9 years that separate him from now to the to A New Hope, you would think that much more of the change would be skewed earlier, not later. What I'm essentially saying is I think that Darth Vader by this stage is very, very, very much like he is in the OT. Not freaking out because of, like, you think about, whenever anybody fails Darth Vader, he usually just pretty coldly kills them. Whereas here, when Reva fails him, he freaks the fuck out, stumbles into the room and starts force choking her or holding her up in the sky. I don't really think that's something he would do. Nor do I think he would be so foolish to accept what she says in terms of her plan as her original plan, rather than a last-ditch effort to save her skin. Because, I guess to lay it out, like, Leia gets kidnapped and taken to the Inquisitor base. Obi-Wan breaks in, saves her, and escapes. This is bad, at least from the perspective of Darth Vader and the Inquisitors. This is not what they wanted. Pretty evidently with how vehemently they were trying to kill Obi-Wan, how many opportunities they would have had to do it, how impossible it would have been for Obi-Wan to escape if not for the, kind of like proto-rebels coming in to save him at the last minute. It's pretty evident to any observer that Reva's plan was not to track Obi-Wan to, the proto-rebels. That was not her plan. That was like a contingency that I'm not even sure why she would have thought up. I guess I can't fault her for, like, it's not really a problem that she would think of that, but the fact that Darth Vader doesn't even recognize that that wasn't the plan at all, and that Reva has failed him, is, it's just an indictment on his intelligence, which, thus far, the fact that he's not even upset, the number of times that character has, like, breached protocol and chain of command, things which absolutely would be valued by the Empire, and also by people like Darth Vader, who himself is lowering the chain of command to the Emperor. Like, it's not just if you're on the dark side of the Force, you just betray people all the time. It's kind of not what we see. It's a little more complicated than that. But it just feels like we've got a very shallow interpretation of who Darth Vader is, like, what the bad guys' goals even are. It's all beholden to plot points that they want to hit, many of which are making sure that you get big, intense action scenes every episode. There's so little in this show of characters having meaningful conversations with one another. It's really frustrating. I said I wasn't going to talk about, like, the show in exhaustive detail, but I can't help myself. Like, that show is... I just wish we had more real conversations between characters rather than spending 20 minutes just in this really stupid, like, oh, I'm going to sneak into this base and hide from stormtroopers. Oh no, contrived drama. But fortunately, the world doesn't react to our protagonists, so they can do things that should compromise them. But none of the world reacts, nobody notices. But hey, it's Star Wars, right? It's always been badly written, apparently. Well, I mean, a lot of the Star Wars shows a lot of the Star Wars media ain't great, but it's really lame as a defense by people who claim to like Star Wars. Yeah, it's always been shit. Really odd. Really, really odd thing to levy in defense of something. I find it really baffling how readily people would defend patently stupid scenes in this show by pointing to other stupid moments in Star Wars as though that means anything at all. It was like textbook whataboutism. Allow me to provide you with an example of one such stupid scene that's being defended. In episode 4, Obi-Wan breaks into an Inquisitor base to save Leia, who was captured by Reva in the prior episode, thanks to an array of really bad scenes. After haphazardly rescuing her with the help of the double agent lady, Obi-Wan sneaks out of this heavily guarded Inquisitor base by leveraging a disguise. Now, disguises, kind of like akin to Hitman, have been leveraged before in Star Wars, for instance in A New Hope. Luke and Han disguised themselves as stormtroopers to walk freely around the Death Star. They were even so smart as to pretend that, that Chewie was their captive so that they could access the location that they needed to go to save Leia. Not, like, fantastic, but I mean, hey, it's all following. Of course, it doesn't work, though, because everything goes wrong due to the protocol that is used by the Empire on the Death Star, because of course they do. This is the Empire, it's a big base. You want to make sure that nobody's sneaking around doing any crazy saboteur stuff. So, you know, you'd be like, oh, well, I guess maybe Obi-Wan disguised himself as a, as like a stormtrooper. Maybe they found like an empty cart or something to hide Leia in and then walk that out to a ship and escape. You know, just something that makes sense. Obi-Wan's disguise is a trench coat and a hat. Obi-Wan, a wanted Jedi in the middle of an Inquisitor base on high alert. Already laughable, but it gets funnier. You see, Leia is hiding underneath Obi-Wan's coat. Like, it's a worse version of the two kids pretending to be adults by hiding underneath a trench coat. How would the show be any worse off for having Obi-Wan leverage any other disguise to escape, like the one I mentioned before? How would that be worse? I feel like it's important to draw a distinction between silly and stupid. Like, yeah, it is a little bit silly when Yoda's, like, bonking R2-D2 on the head. You know, it's a little bit silly. It ain't stupid, though. Like, it's something that he would do. Another one that gets pointed to, like, oh, how silly is it when that stormtrooper bonked his head? So, first of all, that's a mistake. That's absolutely a mistake that they would want to fix. But also, I think it's entirely possible in the Star Wars universe that people may occasionally bonk their heads on doors. You know, that seems pretty realistic. My reference would be how in real life, when shooting this film, that guy in the stormtrooper armor bonked his head. You know, there's a difference between something that's silly and something that's silly and stupid. Obi-Wan sneaking out wearing a trench coat with Leia hiding underneath the trench coat, like peeking her head out and looking around to see if anybody can see them. That's obviously silly. It's laughable. It's hilarious. It's also really stupid, and it reflects pretty badly on Obi-Wan's ability to make smart decisions. Now, to be fair, he has made bad decisions before, like jumping down to fight General Grievous while surrounded by like a million droids. You know, Obi-Wan sometimes makes stupid decisions, but I mean, this is a particularly stupid choice. And I don't really see how the show would be made worse by coming up with any other means by which they would escape. You could literally do the Metal Gear Solid thing where you just have Leia hiding underneath like a cardboard box and waddling forward. That would be silly. That would be kind of stupid. It would be less stupid though. And you could still get your little laughs and your yucks. But hey, you know what? If you got no options for a joke, it's okay to just not tell a joke. Similarly, if you enjoy Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, which of course everybody can enjoy whatever they like, and everybody can enjoy whatever they want, and they may well have reasons that are much more personal to them that just aren't mine. Totally cool. That's totally fine. You may well think that some of the criticisms being levied at the show are pretty stupid. I mean, there have been some really stupid criticisms levied against the show. You don't have to defend every scene though. You really don't. You don't have to defend everything. Sometimes this show might just have a bad scene. It's a little bit disappointing that there's this kind of perception of like, well, yeah, Star Wars has always been silly. Why are people wanting it to have, you know, really emotionally nuanced scenes or really tense drama when Star Wars has absolutely always tried to have meaningful stakes and meaningful character moments. From the very beginning, you're meant to be sad when Obi-Wan dies. You're meant to be shocked when Luke finds out that Darth Vader is his father. You're supposed to be deeply sad when all of the Jedi are wiped out because of Order 66. These films certainly have comedy and silly moments and goofy, campy stuff. They absolutely do, and they always have. They've also all tried, from the very beginning, to achieve meaningful character payoffs and evoke emotions beyond happiness from the viewer. And especially in a universe where you really can do whatever you want in terms of the stories that you want to tell and the tones that you want to achieve, there's no reason why you can't just have an Obi-Wan show that is trying consistently to be serious. No cute droids, No goofy scenes or jokes or interactions, just a serious story. There's nothing wrong with wanting that, even if one is a fan of Star Wars for what it generally is. There's nothing wrong with that. It is not unreasonable to have that preference, especially when what we're getting is only ironically funny and otherwise pretty annoying as a show to watch. Like, is this really a standard that would be applied consistently? You know, like if Andor comes out and it goes hyper serious in tone, people would praise that. The same people would praise that as like a really bold direction. And to be fair, it would be. But like, you can't simultaneously write off the notion that somebody would want something more serious only to turn around. Now, to be fair, I'm arguing with an imaginary person in my head right now, so it may well be that nobody in the world holds this perspective. I just don't. I get the impression that it's not going to be held consistently. When inevitably, and I think it would be inevitable that there will be a fully serious. No, actually, you know what? Didn't the people who made this show compare Obi-Wan to like Joker before it came out? You don't get to do that and then pretend like it's now they haven't done it, but like, you know, people can't look at that quote and agree with that and then be baffled if some people, you know, come into this show and it's not at all going for a serious tone or contemplative tone. We can't do that. We can't afford that. We got toys to sell. We got action scenes that we need to get in every episode. And we got cameos we need to squeeze in to make sure that people show up next week and maintain their Disney Plus subscription. I have looked it up, and this is the quote. Deborah Chow was talking to Total Film. I think I was most excited about getting the opportunity to do a character-driven story in a similar way. It's a different tone, but something like Joker or Logan, where you take one character out of a big franchise and then you really have the time and you go a lot deeper with the character. That seemed really exciting. That's, to me, seemed really exciting to get to do in Star Wars. I find that quote really interesting when something that's pretty frustrating about this show, even though I'm not happy with what it's doing, is how much time is wasted, and also how much time is just not leveraged. This is not a television show on network TV. There is no requirement to make the episode 43 minutes long. On streaming, you can make your episodes as long as or short as you want. And it seems like a lot with the Marvel shows and the Disney and the Star Wars shows that they lean a lot more towards less content in an episode rather than more. You did have the time, presumably, as much time as you really wanted, up until maybe an hour. And we're not getting that. We're not spending much time thinking about what Obi-Wan believes in, what matters to him at all. There's too much plot going on. There's just way too much plot. And the plot sucks. So, it's not a great trade-off, in my opinion. Thankfully, it's almost over. The pain is almost over. Only 2 more episodes left. I'm quite nervous about these upcoming 2 episodes, though, because we've got a lot of unresolved plot beats, and we've also clearly got a lot of unresolved character stuff with Darth Vader, with Reva, with Obi-Wan. There's still more to be resolved, and there is still more room for characters to be further destroyed. Exciting times, eh? I've put a few hours into Mario Strikers Battle League, the sequel to Mario Strikers Charged, which, if you don't know, is one of my favorite sports games, and one of my favorite Mario spin-off games. So I've been playing Battle League, and I have mixed thoughts. To, I guess, lay out the backstory for Fringy's experiences with the Mario Strikers series. I didn't play the first one, but I got Charged. That was the first game I got with my Wii. And I played a lot of Charged. I really liked that game. As somebody who doesn't particularly like sports games and doesn't really care much at all for soccer, I really liked that game. It was really fun. It's a bit of a distant memory now. It's been a long time since I played it, but I remember that game well. I remember that it had a lot of character. I remember that the gameplay was very kinetic, fast-paced, intense, surprisingly intense for a Mario game, a Mario sports game. It had a lot of personality. But I mean, that's, I like the character that Next Level Games has injected into the Mario franchise. They made the older Mario Strikers games. They also made, Luigi's Mansion 3. And the characters in this game, as well as Luigi's Mansion 3, are just a lot more well-defined than they are in the main games. It feels like Mario, Luigi, and whatnot just have more clearly delineated personalities. I mean, of course, I like these characters anyway, but it's always kind of, there's not really much to latch onto, right, in the mainline games. And I think that you saw it in Luigi's Mansion 3, where they pulled a lot more of that material to the forefront, really pushing, you know, Luigi gets scared, but he's actually quite brave because he soldiers on to try and save Mario and Peach and Toad. And that Mario is, like, actually quite a supportive older brother. And very happy and peppy pretty consistently. Peach is elegant. I mean, it's not much, right? But it's in this case, it does feel like they go above and beyond, and you can kind of see that again in Battle League. Like, the animations and the visuals are great, and they really do emphasize the traits that each of these characters have. That said, I miss the edge of Charged. I'm not sure how many of you have played Charged, but that game is way more edgy than it had any right to be, and I really liked it for it. I mean, for reference, Bowser has giant metal claws that he uses in that game while fighting for control of the soccer ball. The opening cutscene is played to, like, rock music. And you got, like, fucking explosions going off and people getting sucked into tornadoes. These huge shock waves scrambling around in the dirt. It's so edgy. But it's really funny to have that edge in, like, a Mario game. I really liked it for that. Certainly not as edgy as Edgy the Hedgy, but I think it's a suitable amount of edge if you wanted to put it in a Mario game. And back in that game, those characters were super well defined. They got really angry. It feels like Charged was... It felt like they probably had a lot less oversight on that one and were allowed to push it more. Whereas I get the impression that Battle League, it pushes character. It definitely pushes character, but at this point, Nintendo has decided how far they would ever allow the violence to go or the characters to get really angry and, you know, smash cameras and shit. And they've drawn the line here, which is not as far as Charged. For as much personality as this game has, and it does, and it looks great, and the animations are fantastic, I do miss the harder edge that, I guess I miss... Yeah, I miss the edge of Charged. I said it's been a long time since I played Charged, but I remember that game being a lot more frenetic. For whatever reason, Battle League comes across as a little bit stilted. It's definitely got more moves. There's a lot more that you can do. I don't remember there being a dodge mechanic in Charged. There's different types of tackles as well. Different types of passes. I think in Charged you couldn't lob. Like, it would lob automatically whenever it needed to. There are a lot of options there. And in some ways, that game probably is more complex, but something just feels off. It feels like, it's lost. I guess to lay it out for, people who aren't super familiar with Charged, the way that works in that game is... Of course, it's a football game. You know, you kick the ball around and then you try and get it in the goal. Pretty simple. The way that the game works is that you can build momentum by either just charging up your shot, and in the case of the characters that you use, when you fully charge them, they can leverage some crazy ultimate move to try and get a goal. But the main method that you would use to try and score, if you were playing at a high level, which of course I did because I played that game a ton, the main strategy you use is to keep passing it to build momentum up. The momentum would be reflected in the lights, because the ball has little lights built into it. So whatever color the lights are would indicate how much speed you built. The more speed you built, the more likely it is that you'll get the ball past the goalie. Especially if you're kicking it around between players, moving it across the level faster than the goalie can keep up with. That's how it works in that game. This game doesn't really leverage as much that momentum, or at least it doesn't seem like it. It's a lot more about making sure that you hit... Like, you charge up your shot, you release the button at just the right time. You hit the button at just the right time. So it's more a matter of timing, which I don't know I would consider a strategy, more so than just, yeah, hit the button at the right time. As opposed to, keep your passing it between players, recognizing that at any time that ball could get stolen from you. That it could get intercepted or you could get knocked out. And I think it just lends itself a bit more to what is, in a sense, a party game. Here it might be a little too... I don't want to write it off, because I can imagine that there's a lot of complexity here the more you get used to it, and I haven't played any online games, maybe it'll come through more clearly there. It's just something feels off about the way that the gameplay works now compared to before, the way that the mechanics work. But maybe I'll get used to it with more time. You know, I want to give it some time, but I think that there will be a barrier to how much time I'm willing to give it, and I think it is an issue that nobody can... You can't... I would be surprised if anybody was saying otherwise, but this game is lacking in content. For reference, Charged has 12 captains, so captains are like your main Mario characters. Mario, Luigi, Peach, Donkey Kong, Bowser. It has 12 captains and 8 sidekicks. The sidekicks being like Hammer Bros, Shy Guys, Toads, Boos, and that means that you got a total of 20 playable characters. Battle League has 10 captains and 0 sidekicks. Charged has 17 stadiums, most of which feature a dynamic element, such as, heavy winds that can blow you off the course, or blow the ball around, lightning strikes that incapacitate you, lava that flows onto the field. Battle League has 5 stadiums, none of which feature a dynamic element, except for the electric fence. This is just like a marked downgrade. This is just worse. Less playable characters, less variety, and... talk about ludonarrative dissonance in a Mario game, but it's a little bit odd to see 2 Marios or 2 Rosalinas running around on the stage because there's only so many configurations that you can have when you've got this many characters. I think the sidekick system makes a lot more sense. You have a captain who has their special abilities, and there's never going to be multiple of them because there's only ever one of them, but there's multiple Boos, there's multiple Shy Guys, that's not only do I think it just makes more sense, I guess, in-universe if you want to talk about the in-universe integrity of Mario, but also I think it just makes sense to have a squad of teammates that each really spec into different attributes. Like Toads are really fast and good at shooting at goal, but otherwise, that's kind of what they got at. Shy Guys, I think they were really balanced. They were just all around good ones. Hammer Bros were stronger. I like that system a lot, and I don't think it's just because that's the system that I'm used to in the old game. I think it just makes a bit more sense intuitively. But if you're going to remove the sidekick mechanic and have anybody be a captain and anybody be a supporting team player, you need more than 10. You just do. If you had as many, that wouldn't be good enough. But to have less, to lose... We've lost Daisy and Diddy Kong, and maybe they'll get added in as DLC, but I don't know, Mario Strikers just came out, Mario Strikers Charge came out with all this content. All of these stadiums with unique elements. I get the impression that the stadiums are never going to have any crazy unique elements. If they were, why wouldn't they be here from the beginning? And so you might be like, well, so what does this game bring to the table? The main new gimmick that Battle League has is gear, which, you give your characters gear that will either increase... Well, it will increase one attribute and then decrease another. So, you could increase a character's speed at the expense of their technique, or increase their strength at the expense of their speed. And then you can kind of tweak it. So, even though each playable character has their own base attributes, you can nudge them in one direction or another. It's a good addition. It would be a great addition in conjunction with all of that content that isn't here, though. It's just not a good enough substitute for twice as many playable characters and 3 times as many stadiums. It just ain't. It's not enough. And so I'm left in a position where I'm having fun with the game so far in what little I've played, but I'm very worried that I'm going to be done with this game in less than a week. There's only 6 single-player cups that you can compete in, and I don't know what value you would get out of playing them again, except a little bit more money to unlock gear. But I get the impression it wouldn't take that long to unlock this gear, because there's only there's 20 pieces of gear per character. They cost about 100 coins each. So I wonder how long it would really take to unlock it all. And once it does, at that point it's just messing around with pretty minor configurations. Maybe the long-term value of the game will become clearer through online play, but I don't know. I'm really worried that I'm gonna play it for the next week, and then I'll feel like I've seen everything it has to offer when Mario Strikers Charged was not endlessly replayable, but I got a lot of hours out of that game. We'll see. Maybe it will improve in the future with DLC. I imagine that DLC is likely, and it will be welcome, but we're gonna need a lot more than just a couple more stadiums and a couple more playable characters to account for the lack of content in this game. I can't say I've been paying close attention to the Summer Games Fest, but it's not going to stop me from making very bold and presumptuous statements about it and the video game industry at large. So here we go. Xbox and Bethesda. Game Pass is the product, and its value is pretty unparalleled at this point. It's far and away the best deal that anybody could really get when it comes to a relatively low monthly cost in exchange for a lot of value, a lot of games at launch, as well as a really big backlog and a continually growing catalog looking forward into the future. I think they posted a picture. Xbox posted a picture of a lot of the games they talked about, because everything they talked about is coming out in the next 12 months. And just the sheer amount of games that are coming out on Game Pass throughout the next year is pretty unreal. For what amounts to, $120 a year? You get a lot more than $120 worth of games if you're fully immersed in that ecosystem. I'm glad that Microsoft chose to focus on games releasing in the next 12 months, but I'm nonetheless baffled by the absence of certain titles. There are games that you announced years ago that are nowhere to be found, and that's not a great look. I don't think you can look at that and really read into that anything particularly positive. Either you announced the game too early, which why even do that, or there are problems on development, which, I mean, we know is the case for some of these games. But I mean, Fable, Avowed, and Perfect Dark were all announced in 2020. The first two were announced 2 years ago, like exactly 2 years ago, pretty much. Yet are nowhere to be found. The Outer Wilds 2, which was announced with a trailer laden with lampshading about how, yeah, we're only showing a pre-rendered trailer because we got nothing to show you, was also not here. So that's great. That's fantastic, isn't it? I think I said the Outer Wilds 2. The Outer Worlds 2 was announced last year, and it's, yeah, nowhere to be found, because it's probably not coming out until next year or even the year afterward. And Hellblade 2 was announced with the Xbox Series X and S, and it's still not out. The only thing you can conclude from that is that these games were announced far too early or something's gone wrong. Though in the case of Perfect Dark, that game is just having a lot of development problems, and that's meant to be from the studio that was billed by Microsoft as a quadruple A studio. I think, yeah, for as much as there is stuff that is beginning to come out now, and the investments that they made over the last, 5 years buying so much stuff is starting to materialize, it still feels like it's taken a long time. Haven't Microsoft been, pretty aggressively acquiring studios since, 2016, 2017? And yet, it feels like it's not there yet. The output isn't there yet and I guess at this point, maybe what I expected in terms of how much they would be able to produce was ambitious or optimistic, but I feel like it wasn't. I feel like I've said for the last couple of years, yeah, this will be the year that Microsoft finally shows all the stuff they've been working on. Because a lot of what they showed at this showcase was stuff that was in development at Bethesda, probably before they had acquired them, like Starfield, Redfall. These were probably games that were being made before they really got brought into the Microsoft fold. So I guess I don't know how much it's... but then again, how much does it matter how much you can attribute to Microsoft if the games are there on the platform and on Game Pass, Speaking of which, though, Starfield looks not great. I really like the premise. I like that it's leaning a lot more into the aesthetics of, 20th century, or I guess even to some extent, modern day space exploration, the really sort of vintage NASA look. I like it. You don't see it as much in far-flung, well into the future science fiction stories. It's a cool aesthetic. I feel like that's all I'm gonna have really, though, in terms of what's gonna be appealing to me. I don't know that the experience they're promising is what I'm looking for. And I mean, it's gonna be, of course, influenced by just what other games that they've made before. Now, this might be a hot take, and this is coming from someone who really hasn't played a lot of these games. I'm not particularly enthralled by the combat of, Skyrim or Fallout. I don't think it's as strong as it really ought to be, considering how much of the experience that seems to comprise, especially when you can look at other games that are also RPGs that have stronger combat systems, considering how much money they make from Skyrim and Fallout. I don't think the games look as good as they should. I don't often talk about like actual graphical fidelity, but again, considering how much money these games make, or maybe more aptly, in the footage that they showed, considering how many times the frame rate dropped, it does not look good enough to justify that. Of course, it's still like a year away from release, but you showed this, you know? Like, there's no getting around that. I get a little bit annoyed. It's like, yeah, it's ahead of release. It's like, yeah, but you showed this to me. You showed this to me knowing that I'm gonna develop expectations and opinions based on what you've shown me. That's the point of marketing material. You want me to have a positive opinion, and it's kind of not. But I mean, you know, I can put all that to one side. This is the main thing that they said that's got me like, oh, I don't know. The game will apparently have 1,000 explorable planets. All that means is that those planets are almost certainly not going to be thoughtfully crafted levels. They're going to be either procedurally generated, or there are going to be a lot of ones that are copies of another one. And, you know, when the choice is big but mediocre or small and curated, I would like to think that most people would lean towards small and curated. But then again, nobody played Mankind Divided, so I guess that's not the case. I mean, I get it, right? Like, when you promise a space game, people want to explore a lot of planets. It makes sense. I can imagine them saying like 50 planets. You know, that would still feel like a lot, but 1,000, there's no way. There'll probably be like 5 or 6 real hub planets that have cities with interesting things going on, and then probably like 20 or 30 planets that are dedicated levels, and then I can imagine that a lot of them are just big empty spaces. Because of course, if you're gonna go for a game that's trying to be somewhat realistic in its presentation of space, which is the impression I get, the vast majority of the terrestrial planets you're gonna be exploring are just gonna be like Mars, where it's just empty. Not to say that you can't have interesting stuff going on these planets. You could have like subterranean cities or ancient lost civilizations. You could have a lot of cool stuff. And I hope that there's a lot of cool stuff, but when you tell me there's 1,000 planets, the impression I get is, right, so it's not really 1,000 planets though, is it? It's more like you got some levels and then a bunch of like really empty plains that you can kind of walk around that don't have much for you to do. It just doesn't instill me with a lot of confidence. But who knows, you know? Who knows? I'll keep an eye on it. I'm just, I don't know. I don't know anything about Diablo, but I think Diablo 4 looks cool. I think the visuals are awesome, but as for the game itself, like when I watch them talking about, oh yeah, this is Diablo, and this is what you do, and this is the end game, I got nothing. Yeah, I got nothing really to say. I think it looks neat, alright? I think it looks neat. Like, that might legitimately just be all it is. I think that game visually looks great. As for whether it's a game I'll play, yeah, I guess we'll see. Silksong looks amazing. I'll play that after I finally finish Hollow Knight, whenever that happens. And I'm sure there was some other stuff that was important to talk about from Xbox, but that's all I got for you right now. Again, good thing that they focused on the next 12 months, but still, there's a lot of things where it's like, I'm not really sure where these games are. But the impression that you get when you look at... I feel like a broken record saying this, but I just think it's accurate. You think about like what Sony has coming out in the next 12 months. It's like God of War Ragnarok. I don't know if I'd count Forspoken, because that's coming out on PC as well. That's like multi-platform. It's Square Enix. And then again, everything Xbox did was open. Well, yeah, we'll bunch them in. And then what else? We got like, what else has Sony got that's coming out? Like, again, Final Fantasy 16 is third party, but I guess that counts. The Last of Us remake, right? We're jumping the gun a bit. That's part of the next show that we're going to talk about. But in terms of the broader point, if you like third-person narrative-driven action-adventure games with no multiplayer, then there's a lot on Sony's platform that you would enjoy on PlayStation. If you don't, there's really not a lot. What is there? Gran Turismo, but if you want to play racing games, you got Forza, which is going for simulation, and then Forza Horizon, which is arcade. Strategy games, shit out of luck. RPGs, maybe if you want to call Horizon an RPG, I would say that's a stretch, but that's one. Compared to how many RPGs are going to be part of the Xbox platform from Bethesda, from Obsidian, I think In Exile as well. They own In Exile now. So there's a different variety in the types of RPGs that you're getting as well. Multiplayer, of course, you got Halo. Halo floundering, but you got Halo. There's just a lot more variety on Game Pass. Like, if you buy Game Pass, you've got access to basically any genre that you could ever want. A really big backlog. It's just, I think that Game Pass has snuck up on people, and I think we can see how that is influencing decisions that Sony are making, because Sony's president, whose name eludes me at the moment, has said that a goal for PlayStation is going to be more live service games by 2025, more multiplayer games, just more variety in their services, and they've done the new controversial PlayStation Plus stuff that just isn't as good of a deal as Game Pass. I think it's, for as much as there's attention within certain spheres of the gaming industry focused on the types of games Sony makes, I think what Microsoft has created has a broader appeal long-term, and it's just a matter of time until people start to realize that long. I think that there's a lot of people who are, I guess, sleeping on Game Pass, and it's only a matter of time until they realize that it's a deal that can afford them a lot of value. And I guess I'm just curious to see how that will influence Sony and how it already appears to be influencing them in the types of games that they make. That more so is the takeaway from the Xbox showcase, is Game Pass is the product. It is all about Game Pass. It's probably going to work out for them in the long term. I don't know. You would have asked me like 5 years ago, I would have had a much different opinion on it, but it seems like exclusivity and that being like a really important thing to sell consoles and to sell your platform just doesn't matter that much anymore. As long as it isn't on the main competitor, they don't seem to care. It's much more about buying into services than it is buying into products, which makes a lot of sense, really. And I think it's going to become more prominent going forward for all of the good and bad that may well bring about. So, the Summer Games Fest stream. Lots of science fiction survival horror games. I do like the genre, but there were, 5, 6 of them? The Callisto Protocol looks cool. Though given that Dead Space remake is coming out like a few months after that one, I think, you gotta wonder which one will offer the greater experience. I guess. But hey, like, it's nice that these games are around. But again, there were about 6 or 7 of them. Modern Warfare 2 looks alright. I'm a little bit worried that they're straying away from the grounded style of the first game. Not Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, but Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I liked the more grounded style that they were going for with Modern Warfare in the campaign. I mean, I think everybody's favorite missions were the SAS missions where you'd be like sweeping through a house or sweeping through a compound, like the night vision ones. I imagine that they'll have those ones again, but there's a lot more like action stuff going on. And then they had that gameplay showcase that's kind of like a callback to felt like it was a little bit of a callback to The Only Easy Day Was Yesterday, Modern Warfare 2, and then the opening of Call of Duty 4. But like, when I see them ramping up, like going on their boat and flying onto the ship, it's like, alright, like, let's dial it back a little bit, alright? We don't need to go too crazy. I don't hugely care about the multiplayer for this game. The original, again, not to be confused with the original, had some really bad maps. There was balancing issues with the weapons. I don't really care for Warzone, so I guess I'm just mainly going to be looking at the campaign. Again, looks alright. I'll keep an eye on it. It's kind of odd how it's come around. I don't care about Battlefield anymore. We've swung back around to like people care about Call of Duty, but Battlefield is. I wonder what's happening there. They've announced the new Season 1, right? But nobody cares. It's over. Wasn't there a report as well, I think, that, I don't know if this is true, but I know that there was the report that apparently, the game is, they're in abandoned ship mode. They've given up and they're just moving on to the next Battlefield. Like 6 months in for what was them leaning entirely into live service. Embarrassing. What an embarrassment that game is. I got the impression that a lot of people weren't happy with that stream. That there was a lot of not what people wanted. And we'll get to that later, but, you know, I would say spending the last, 20 minutes of the stream talking about The Last of Us in all of its forms, with very little to really show, bit of a mistake. When I'm watching, a showcase for video games, I don't want to hear about the TV show. You can talk about the show someplace else, but when I'm watching a game stream, I want to see about the games. I don't want to see, what was that? Except for 15 minutes of just vanity. Of look at all this Last of Us content. But then again, my interest in The Last of Us as an IP has been seriously hurt, and the more that they focus on The Last of Us, the less potential there is for the IPs that I still care about to get dragged through the dirt like Jak and Daxter and Uncharted. It's only a matter of time. Hey, we're working on multiplayer. Here's a picture. What is that? And then, surely we could all agree, a totally unnecessary remake of The Last of Us. Game is less than 10 years old. I know that the trailer said completely made from the ground up, but it looks like it's built on top of the original game. It looks that way. So it's probably not like what we're seeing with Resident Evil 4, where it's like gonna be like 2 and 3, where it's a full-blown remake. It's probably just gonna be like a more polished, detailed, graphically enhanced remaster, which, to be fair, that effort is not... Like, a lot of people are saying it looks the same. I don't think it does. I think there are aspects of the original that look better, though, in terms of lighting. But, I mean, clearly the textures and the models are way better. But why? You know, why? Why? Was anybody really asking for a Last of Us remake over anything else? I would have sooner taken an Uncharted 1 remake, and even that would be unnecessary. Is Naughty Dog gonna be, like, a Last of Us studio? Is that their main focus going forward? Or when are we gonna get something new from them? It's been a long time since we got something new from them. The longest time ever that there has been for Naughty Dog. If they're working on the remake, and they're working on multiplayer, are they working on a new game? I haven't written off, because a lot of people have written off Naughty Dog, but they made enough really great games that I can't do that yet, for as much as I don't like The Last of Us 2. But what are they doing? What are they working on? What a way to end your show, you know? Spending 20 minutes talking about an IP that a lot of people don't like anymore. Some other games that have been talked about, shown off in the last couple of weeks that look cool to me. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge looks fantastic. The developers who made that made a game called Flint Hook, which I thought was really cool. And I believe some of the people who work on Streets of Rage 4 have also worked on this game, so I'm actually quite excited for it. I think it's coming out in a couple of days. I don't know much about Street Fighter as a series, but Street Fighter 6 looks cool. I think it looks cool, and I think it looks great visually. I know that there's been like a lot of controversy surrounding it, but I like the way that that game looks. It feels like it's still retaining the more comic book style that the other games had before it. It's like that midway point between stylized and realism, kind of. I'm sure that there's a word for it. I think it looks cool. I think it looks fun. Speaking as someone who doesn't know much about Street Fighter at all, really, or fighting game mechanics at all. I haven't played System Shock, and I'd really like to. And the remake, from what I understand, is pretty close to one-to-one. And there's a part of me that realizes that it's going to be hard to play the old one with the control, so yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to pick up that remake. It looks cool. I'm sure that there are other games that looked really cool, but I forgot to write them down, so sorry other games, but you looked cool, whatever those games were. I get the impression that people are disappointed with what's been shown over the last few days. I think that this is indicative of pretty wild expectations, especially given that events like E3, which Summer Games Fest has essentially taken the place of, have been dwindling in relevance. It's almost like people have forgotten what's been going on for the last few years, you know, that there's been much more of a move away from E3 to events that are hosted by individual publishers or, you know, like Sony having their own thing several months removed from everything else. The expectation that when watching these streams, you're gonna get these crazy big announcements is rooted in the way that these events used to go, like 10 years ago. But one big blowout event per year doesn't really exist in a digital world where publishers can easily get the word out on their games. They don't need to rely on something like E3. They can just throw up a stream and people will check it out and the news will spread. And, if anything, the big blowout showcases are probably a little bit scary because they can easily drown out smaller titles. Like, there were some people who, like, legitimately thought that Grand Theft Auto 6 was gonna get announced at that Summer Games Fest showcase. Really? Was that really an expectation? I mean, first of all, Rockstar does whatever they want. They can announce a game whenever they want and everybody will pay attention, so there's not really much incentive to show up at these events, and they typically don't. But I mean, think about it from, if Grand Theft Auto 6 got announced at, like, this stream, nobody's talking about fucking Gotham Knights or anything like that. Those games would get totally drowned out. And I think there's a recognition from a lot of publishers that if you do your own event and announce your own games, people are always going to be paying attention. Like, a lot of people don't pay attention to the streams, or they're not in tune with, E3's coming up. The news just makes its way to them. And in the current world that we live in, the digital world, you don't need to show up at E3 for that news to get to people. It'll just get to them whenever you announce it. So an a sense, there's a lot more incentive to show things at your own events rather than showing up with big announcements here. I think people need to temper their expectations, and this is generally something I would advocate for anyway, because hype culture is bad for you. It's really bad for you. Extreme emotional responses to marketing material will cause you to make bad purchasing decisions. It's the reason why people pre-order games that end up coming out broken for months when the warning signs were always there. It's the thing that causes people to pre-order DLC for games as well, or to buy stupid, like pre-order bonus versions like gold editions and those stupid tier lists with all of these crazy perks and everything. It's the reason why people kind of irrationally defend bad games, because they don't want to admit that they were a fool and made a mistake. It's just not beneficial for you, really. It compromises your ability to make good decisions for yourself. And it's always worth remembering, the point of all of these events is for the publishers, first and foremost, marketing. You keep that in mind, you'll be okay. Rise above the hype. I'm not really sure what the point of this topic was, but with that, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you very much for hanging out. This was Cosmoronic 15. I'm Fringy, and I'll catch you all next time.